StrayAllDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, confidence, put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unified philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is the 80-20 rule applied to people. Before we get into this, I remind you all of two things. First of all, my daily motivation, Monday motivation message is guaranteed to have you focused, sharp, and on point, start your day, your week, respectively. All you got to do to receive these, be a member of my texting community. It's free to join. Just text me at my number, 305-384-6894. Once we start sending those messages out again, you'll be getting them straight to your phone. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. You like to have me as your direct coach. You already know you want to have me as your direct coach. You already know you want to take yourself to a higher level right now, this year, and not wait another year, not keep telling yourself you're going to get to it later, not telling yourself you'll do it as soon as, because as soon as ain't ever happening. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. We have options for everybody. We will find a way to make it work for people who are serious about taking yourself to the next level. We got a lot of different options, even when it comes to financing and the money. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. With all that out the way, let's pick up right here on the 80-20 rule applied to people. We all know the rule, also known as Pareto's principles, which states the 80% principle, singular, which states that 80% of the outputs come from 20% of the inputs. So today, I'm going to explain how the 80-20 principle applies to people, connections, and relationships. This is not an all-inclusive list. I may add to it with future episodes. Point number one, 20% of the people you know can solve 80% of your problems. The topic again today is 80-20 rule applied to people. 20% of the people you know can solve 80% of your problems. What I mean is, anytime you have an issue, there is a small subset of your connections who are capable of helping you solve that problem. The rest of them can't do anything. So think about if you were in a situation where you really needed something done, resolved, handled, or addressed. Who are the people you would think of calling on to help you? If you really needed something addressed right now, who are the people you would think of calling on? I would bet it's not everybody that you know. Who are the people who you would, who are the people you think of calling on? It's not every single person in your Rolodex. It's a handful of people that you know who you believe could actually come through and have an effect on the circumstance, at least in a positive way. This is a handful of your associates, not all of them. Now, while I do still believe that there is no downside to having positive relations with as many people as possible, no matter how many people you are connected to, 20% of them are the ones who are capable of helping you in places where you may not be capable of helping yourself. Those are the people who you want to look for more like that. The people who have these what we call high agency individuals who can get things done, even if they don't have the resources. They know how to be resourceful, and they just are really good at having positive effects on situations for whatever reasons. There's something about them, who they are, and how they carry themselves. That you want to have these high agency people around you in your life, and the more of them you have around, the better the position you put yourself in. I'll talk about these folks in episode number 2053, how to be a high agency person. So who are the people that can really, who are the people not even that can, let's just look at your past experience. Forget about the future. Let's think about the past. In your life, who are the people who have been able to make things happen when you really needed it? Who are those folks? And what is it about them? Once you go through the list of the people who've been able to make things happen, it's probably fewer than 10. When you really think about it in your life, what are the things, what is it about them that put them or causes them or allows them or makes them, whatever word it is, to help get things done for you that maybe you couldn't have done on your own? Maybe you could, but they were able to step in when you needed them. What is it about them? And once you get some answers to that question, then you want to ask yourself, how do I get more people like that around me? Or how do I find more people like these individuals so I can have high agency people all around me? And also, you should ask yourself another key question. How can I make sure I'm one of them? How can I make sure I'm a high agency person so that I can be the answer to somebody else asking the same question? Point number two. Today's topic, once again, is the 80-20 rule applied to people. Number two, 20% of the things you do in your relationships cause 80% of the problems. And also, this flips around as well to other people. 20% of the things they do cause 80% of your problems. If you look back on any problems you've ever had in any relationship, past or present, or common problems that seem to come up in all of your relationships, past or present, you will notice that there are a handful of things that you are doing or not doing that leads to those conflicts. Yes, I mean you, not other people, you. There's certain things you're doing that are leading to conflicts in your relationships. This is where you would need to look internally or to get some help internally, such as a therapist or a coach, so you can find out what ways in which you are contributing to the conflicts or the negative outcomes in your relationships. Usually, like in my work as a coach, I talk to people who are often telling me about their relationship issues, and they're telling me how they're having an issue with their spouse, husband or wife, or they're telling me how they have always had issues with people around them. They always noticed that there was something that would come up in the people around them based on who the person who I'm talking to is. So I'm this type of person. So people around me have always tried to say that I was this or I was that, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not that they're lying, but what I always want to do when I'm having those conversations is once we can come to understand what it is that they're saying they've been going through or always experiencing in life, we always want to come back to the person that we're talking to, because I can't coach your friends that you grew up with. I can't coach your coworkers at work. I can't coach your wife if I'm coaching you. I'm talking to you. So I still need to deal with you and figure out what can you do about this circumstance to better the situation, even though the idiot and the fool and the person who's completely in the wrong in this situation is not you, is the other person. Even if that's true, we still need to figure out what you can do, because I'm not coaching that other person and they may never change. So maybe you got to get away from them, or maybe you just have to adjust the way you deal with them so that the situation stops rearing its ugly head in your life. But we have to figure out something that we can do. And one thing that I say here at Work on Your Game is that we always start with the person in the mirror and we always end with the person in the mirror. Why is that? Because that's the only person we can control. I have no control over what your wife does. I have no control over what your kids do. I have no control over what your coworkers are doing or what the people in your neighborhood are doing. Even if all of these people we're referencing are really bad people and they're causing all the problems, there's still problems. And if you're a leader, you're responsible for the problems more than they are. That's the penalty of being a leader, is that you have full responsibility over issues, even though you are not the cause of the issues. This may seem a little bit screwed up. Call it whatever you want to call it. But I call it the penalty of leadership. This is what happens when you're a leader. You're responsible for everything. So in case any of you didn't know, now you know. Okay, so being that human beings are creatures of habit, we all have certain things that we do all the time that probably serve us in many ways. And we also have things we do all the time that hurt us in many ways. And sometimes it can be the same thing, serves you in one area, but it hurts you in another area. So let's say if you're a man and you're really diligent and you're really time focused when it comes to getting all your work done, and this is the reason why you're succeeding professionally, being that same type of person with your wife or girlfriend could cause her to be really pissed off about you, because you shouldn't be treating your relationship with her the same way you treat your career or your job or your business. And she can see that and she's starting to resent it because she's being treated like a line item on your day planner instead of the person that you're in a relationship with. So the same habit is doing great things for you over here, but it's destroying you over here. And again, creatures of habit, as humans as we are, we got to watch ourselves. Our strongest habits are often the ones that lead to the problems. Now, it doesn't mean that you should get rid of the habit. You just got to figure out, okay, why is this habit leading to a problem over here in this space? And maybe how can I utilize this habit to maybe develop a subsequent habit that can be an add-on, an addendum to this habit that will actually help the situation instead of making it worse. Because right now, this habit is allowing me to perform with flying colors over here, but is destroying me over there. How can I make some fixes to this? The first step is awareness, ladies and gentlemen. The first step to all of this is you got to become aware of what the habit is and why it's causing an issue. That's the second step, is why is it causing an issue? And the third step is now what do we do about it? Because again, if the habit's working in one area and hurting in another area, I'm not going to tell you to get rid of the habit, because we are in a results-based business. We just got to learn when to use certain things and when not to use certain things. That's also known as wisdom. Knowledge is having the tools and the information. Wisdom is knowing when and how to apply your tools and information. Those are two different things. You give someone a full tool set, but if they don't know how to use any of the tools, does the tool set matter? No, because they don't know how to use them. If I give you a brand new car and it's a $300,000 sports car, but it's a stick shift and you don't know how to ride a stick shift, well, the car is not very useful to you in the moment because you don't know how to drive it. So having the tool itself is one thing, but knowing how and when and where and why to use the tool is a whole different skill. Okay, so that's why you need wisdom more than you need knowledge. Everybody following what I'm saying here? So you got to figure out how your habits may be working or how they're not helping in certain areas, helping in one area but not helping in others. The challenge is not whether or not you have habits that could be helping and hurting at the same time. That's not the challenge because we all have them. The challenge is figuring out which habits, where are they helping, where are they hurting, and how can we take more control over them so that they're doing less damage than what they're doing right now. And again, how do we turn it off when we're over here, but turn it all the way up when we're over there? And then what habit needs to replace the one that got turned down over here? All of these things are within your grasp and they're within your power to do. The first step on all of them is you have to become aware of these things. And remember, over here at Work on Your Game, we start in the mirror and we end in the mirror, because the object that you see in the mirror is the only thing that you have full control over. You don't have full control over anything else. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is the 80-20 principle applied to people and relationships. Number 3, the flip side of this is that 20% of the things you do in a relationship produce 80% of the positive outcomes. So this applies in business. This applies in friendships. This applies in intimate relationships. 20% of the things that you're doing are producing 80% of the positive outcomes. So speaking from a male perspective, now a lot of men will be able to relate to this, and I bet if you took the point that I'm about to share with you to a woman in your life, she would agree with it as well. This point that I am sharing with you. It's not every single thing you do that makes a deposit into the relationship bank account with your woman. Not everything you do is making a positive deposit. It's not. You might think it is, but it ain't. It's a handful of things that you do, and hopefully that you're doing. Because if you're not, then you are going emotionally bankrupt right now. That hopefully, if you're doing these handful of things that you should be aware of, they make all the difference. And when you're not doing them, that makes all the difference in why things are going bad. And when you are doing them, that makes the difference in why things are going good. This applies again, friendships, business, any other human connection, intimate relationships, applies across the board. What are the few things that you do in that relationship that keeps it going strong? You can look at your friendships. There are some things. Look at your business relationships, like clients that you work with, the customers. There are some things. You look at your intimate relationships. There are some things. The better you are plugged into what these things are, the more you can focus on emphasizing these things as they do most of the heavy lifting for the relationship. Again, this is the 80-20 principle applied to relationships. This means if you understand what is the 20% that's producing 80% of the result, you can focus on just doing the 20%, which means you actually get to do less, but you're producing more returns. Less is more. If you ever heard that phrase, the 80-20 principle is a reflection of less is more. If you do less things, but the right less things, then you're producing more results with less effort. The biggest challenge for less is more is that many people don't know which things to do when you're applying less is more. So if I say cut it down to 20% of what you're doing, the mistake people make is they don't know what's 20. And that's a good mistake because most people don't. They don't have the insight to analyze and figure out, all right, how do I know? How do we deduce what the 20% is that we should do versus the 20 or the 80% that we shouldn't do? Again, these do most of the heavy lifting without too much effort or too many additional resources from your end. And again, it applies the same way in business. 20% of your clientele, for example, produces 80% of your revenue. Any of you who runs a business, look at your customer list and you will find that this is 100% true. Your business wants to now find more people who fit the 20% description so you can produce more revenue, and eventually maybe the 80% that's producing the lower levels of revenue, maybe you don't need them anymore. All right, just a thought. Point number 4, today's topic, once again, is 80-20 principle applied to relationships and people. Number 4, in any community, 20% of the people hold 80% of the potential and power. In any community, 20% of the people hold 80% of the the potential and the power. Those are the people who you need to know. So speaking of what I just said at the end of point number 3, this applies in any type of community, not just business related. So when you move into a new neighborhood, 20% of people in that neighborhood are making everything happen. You should probably figure out who those people are, because if you want something to happen, you're going to have to go through them one way or another. So you might as well make friends with them pretty quickly. In a business, for example, you get 10 new prospects to your business. 2 of those 10 prospects are going to be worth more money than the other 8 put together, even if they don't all become customers or clients. You need to figure out who are the 2, and those are people you need to emphasize on, making sure you bring them into the fold as with regards to what you have going on. Remember moving into a condominium once, and I met a nice older couple. I would see them in the elevator a couple of times, and I guess they surmised that I was new in the building. And the man In one of our early passing conversations, he told me that he and his wife have been living in the building for about 10 years and that they were active members of the homeowners association in the condominium. He also told me that if there's anything happening in the building that I had a question about or a challenge about, just let him know and he would make sure that it got taken care of. That's what he told me like one of the first times I ever talked to him. Now, I don't think that guy was doing that as a power move. I don't think he was trying to assert his power in the building and let me know that he had some pull. I think he was making sure that he was in touch with and visible to everybody in the building who he came across, because clearly living in that building for 10 years, he cared about the building. He cared about who was living in it, and he wanted to make sure everyone had a good experience in the building. So he was just letting me know, if anything's going wrong here, I'm your guy. I'm the guy you should come talk to. That's what he was letting me know early in that conversation. In short, and also another piece I want to add to that, he wanted to be visible, make sure everybody knew about him. And because he hadn't seen me before, he deduced that I was new to the building, which I was. And he was one of the 20% who I needed to know in that building. And he wasn't lying. He was one of the 20% I needed to know. Something needed to be done. He was getting it done. But the fact that he was such a hands-on person and making sure that everyone knew that he was the guy who could make things happen or fix things that were broken in the building, there weren't too many issues in that building. This is one of the buildings that it was very well run. The staff was on point. They made clear what the rules were. They enforced the rules clearly. And people like him made sure that the people who were supposed to be doing what they're supposed to be doing were actually doing it. Whereas in other buildings that I've lived in, they don't have this kind of dynamic, and people are basically doing whatever they want, and things get really reckless. So the whole point is 20% of people have that power. You need to know who the 20% are. The same thing with a sports coach. If you hold an open tryout and have 100 players showing up for a 10-person roster, you're probably going to have about 20 of those 100 players can actually play. The other 80 can't play. You just need to get them out of the gym as quickly as possible. But about 20 of them can actually play, and now you got to narrow it down to 20. Now at that 20, you got to pick 10. But 20 out of 100 can play. So out of that 20, some of them you're going to have to cut, and you're going to say, damn, I wish I didn't have to cut that guy because he actually can play. But I can only pick 10, so he got to go. But 80 of them, they're not even in consideration. So again, 20% of your prospects and your people have the potential, they have the power. You need to pick out the 20% so you can really focus on them in detail and then make your best decision. But you shouldn't be sifting through the whole group because everybody ain't qualified. All that said, let's recap today's class. It says 80-20 rule applied to people. We know the rule, Pareto's principle, 80% of your results come from 20% of the inputs, right? Number one, 20% of the people you know can solve 80% of your problems. So when you have a problem, you need to know who are the high agency people who can get things done. Number two, 20% of the things you do in your relationships cause 80% of the problems. So if you look at the problems you're having in your relationships, there's some habit that you have that is leading to most of those problems. You fix that, you can fix these problems or eliminate those problems. Number three, the flip side of it, 20% of the things you do in a relationship produce 80% of the positive outcomes. So you need to find out what's actually making things work in your relationship and do more of those things. Man, you can even ask the woman in your life. She will tell you directly. Number four, in any community, 20% of the people hold 80% of the potential and of the power. You hold a tryout for 100 people, about 20 of those 100 people can actually play. The other 80, get them out of there quickly. When you're selling things, you got 80 new leads. About 20 of those leads are going to be very valuable. The other 80, some of them will have some value, some will have no value. The other ones are marginal. But 20% is where the juice is. You need to figure out where that juice is as quickly as possible. I was just going through as many of those leads as quickly as possible so you can find all of them before somebody else grabs it from you. All that said, folks, workonyourgameuniversity.com. You want to make sure you're focusing on your 20% that produces 80% of the result. And then we can double down on that and produce even more and keep doing it and repeat the process over and over. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. Have me as your direct coach. Let's look at the whole 100. Figure out what the 20% is producing 80% of the result, or what the 20% will be that will produce 80% of the result. And then let's drill down, double down, triple down, and quadruple down on that. Work on your game. Dre, all